Speaker, it's clear Beijing interfered in last year's 2021 election. Beijing's ambassador to Canada commented critically and publicly during that election campaign, and Beijing spread disinformation through proxies on Chinese language social media platforms. And last week, we find out that Beijing also interfered in the 2019 election. We find out that the Prime Minister was told 10 months ago in January about hundreds of thousands of dollars that were illegally funneled to at least 11 election candidates. My question is simple. Who are these 11 election candidates?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, it's good to see the Conservatives actually taking foreign interference seriously for once. We saw in the last Parliament how Conservative members didn't care about protecting our national security. They removed their members from NSICOP that would provide the information that the member opposite is looking for. The member from Durham, when he was leader, he took his toys and went home, took Conservative members off that committee, which actually provides the very information the member opposite is looking for. We have taken our democratic institutions seriously and implemented many measures to ensure that foreign interference.
Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, that is an appalling answer. It's this government that allowed People's Liberation Army scientists of the People's Republic of China into a top-level lab in this country against the government's own security protocols and in threat to the Five Eyes Alliance. We're talking about payments of hundreds of thousands of dollars to election candidates. We're talking about Beijing putting agents in MPs' offices. We're talking about an increasingly aggressive campaign to silence Canadian MPs. My question again to the government is very simple. Who are these 11 candidates?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, the risk of foreign interference is something we've taken seriously since forming government. That's actually precisely why we put in place a panel, a non-partisan panel, to assess any sort of foreign actors' interference to determine if it's credible threats that the public should be aware of. All parties were briefed and provided information about foreign interference, something the Conservatives never bothered to do previously. Mr. Speaker, putting in place a non-partisan panel during elections will ensure that our democratic institutions are protected.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haut-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service informed the Prime Minister that the Chinese Communist regime influenced the Canadian federal elections in 2019 and 2021. This illegal influence included the clandestine financing of a network of at least 11 candidates, and that no one was criminally charged. The Prime Minister boasted to the media that his government has taken significant steps to combat this threat, but his significant steps appear to be stealth in nature because no one has seen them. We're talking about 11 candidates. What is he going to do to protect Canadian democracy?
Mr. Speaker, any foreign interference poses a threat to the very fabric of our democracy, and we will never tolerate it. The RCMP and intelligence agencies are aware of these threats and are investigating. In addition, all actions are on the table, Mr. Speaker, including legislation, and I hope the honourable members across the way will support the cybersecurity legislation before this House. Canadians demand that we take action, and we always will.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haut-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious threat. Today, for the first time in Canadian history, we have criminal charges against a Hydro-Quebec employee that is accused of being a Chinese spy. And now CSIS has said the peril Canada faces if it chooses not to act on allegations of Chinese foreign interference is very significant. Canada's former ambassador to China, David Mulroney, said he did not think the government understood this or was inclined to act. Simple question, Mr. Speaker. We want to know who were the 11 candidates that benefited from the Chinese communist funding. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for raising a very important question. There's nothing more serious for all parliamentarians than national security. My colleague was asking what steps we took. I'd like to inform him that recently we already strengthened the rules with respect to critical minerals across the country. And recently, I named 3 transactions to protect national security in this country. On this side of the House, I think that we take national security very seriously, and we've always acted in the interests of Canadians.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. Mackenzie Gray with Global. We've reported that CSIS gave you a briefing that in 2019 China interfered in the Canadian election. At the G20, you're going to be sitting beside Xi Jinping. Are you going to raise this issue with him?
Let me first highlight something that Canadians can be reassured by. We created a special independent commission made up of top officials and security experts to ensure that our elections continue to be free and fair in Canada. And in both the 2019 and 2021 elections, they reported that our elections unfolded with integrity. So Canadians, yes, why we need to be mindful about the real threats of foreign interference that exist at home and around the world. They can also be reassured that our institutions are strong, that our democracy is strong, and that we have measures in place to ensure that people know about it if anything does happen. But of course, we're always going to engage with leaders in ways that highlight concerns of Canadians, that stand up for our values and underscore preoccupations that Canadians have about things going on in the world. That's one of the reasons why these summits are so important, to bring people together. And we're going to continue to make sure that Canadians' preoccupations, but also Canadians' opportunities are highlighted in the world.